It was sold for less than the price of a single city block, a decision that would later reshape global power in ways no one involved could have predicted. A frozen expanse no empire could properly hold. No gold had been confirmed, no oil had been imagined, and yet, within decades, this same land would become one of the most strategically valuable territories on Earth. The coastline fractures into thousands of islands, cut by dark water and ice. Forests press against steep mountains. Glaciers move slowly, silently, reshaping the land without warning. Winter stretches for months. Light disappears. Distance becomes a barrier no road can solve. Settlements cling to the edges of survival, separated by wilderness that does not forgive mistakes. Movement is slow. Communication slower. Control almost impossible. This is Alaska, mid-19th century, a region that resists control even before anyone attempts it. What appears to be a reckless land purchase is, in reality, the transfer of a territory no empire could sustain, and no one fully understood. This account follows Alaska from indigenous control to Russian expansion and American acquisition, tracing how isolation, exploitation, and hidden resources transformed it from a distant liability into a strategic cornerstone. Long before any imperial claim, the land operated through systems already adapted to its conditions. Across the Arctic coast, the Inupiat moved along sea ice, following marine mammals with precision shaped by generations of observation. Further inland and along river systems, the Yupik structured seasonal movement around fish runs and shifting environmental cycles. Along the southeastern coast, the Tlingit and Haida maintained complex trade networks that extended beyond the region, connecting communities through exchange rather than borders. The land was not defined by ownership in the imperial sense. It was defined by knowledge of terrain, climate, migration, and timing. Structures existed, but they were not rigid. They adapted continuously, shaped by necessity rather than permanence. Food systems were precise. Shelter systems were efficient. Movement was calculated. A single misjudgment of weather, ice, or distance could not be corrected easily, and the cost was often immediate. The environment did not allow recovery without cost. And yet, within these constraints, stability existed. Balance depended on scale. Resources were used, but not exhausted. Pressure remained within limits the land could absorb. This equilibrium did not account for expansion driven from outside the system. That pressure would arrive from across an ocean, carrying a different logic entirely. The movement toward Alaska began far to the west. Across Siberia, Russian expansion advanced steadily through the 16th and 17th centuries, driven by the fur trade. Animal pelts, especially sable, had already proven their value in global markets. The system demanded new sources. By the time Russian explorers reached the Pacific coast, the next horizon was no longer land, but water. In the 1740s, expeditions led by Vitus Bering confirmed the existence of a vast territory beyond Asia. It was not isolated. It was connected to another continent. The discovery did not immediately produce settlement. It produced interest. Private traders and hunters, promyshleniki, moved first, following reports of sea otters whose pelts were among the most valuable in the world. Their arrival introduced a system that did not adjust to the environment. It imposed itself upon it. On Kodiak Island, Grigory Shelikov established the first permanent Russian settlements in 1784. The outpost secured territorial claims. It also initiated a pattern. Indigenous communities were drawn into the fur trade under pressure. Labor was extracted through coercion. Hostages were taken to enforce compliance. Hunting intensified rapidly. Sea otter populations declined as extraction exceeded natural recovery rates. The system accelerated even as its foundation weakened. Disease followed contact. Entire communities were exposed to illnesses for which no immunity existed. Population loss was not gradual. It was immediate and severe. Despite these outcomes, expansion continued. In 1799, the Russian crown formalized control through the Russian-American Company, granting it authority over trade, governance, and territorial administration. Its capital stood at New Archangel, now Sitka. From a distance, this structure resembled stability. From within, it relied on constant input of labor, resources, and coordination across vast distances. The system functioned, but only under continuous strain. At its peak, Russian America operated as a controlled network of extraction and administration. Fur shipments moved across the Pacific, connecting Alaska to markets far beyond its coastline. Trading posts expanded. Administrative routines developed. The presence of the Russian Orthodox Church introduced a parallel system, religious, cultural, and social, embedding itself within local communities and leaving traces that would persist beyond political control. Structures appeared durable, but durability depended on conditions that were already changing. Sea otter populations, heavily hunted, began to decline significantly. The primary resource driving the system no longer existed in sufficient numbers to sustain it. Supply lines stretched across enormous distances, requiring coordination that could not be guaranteed. Ships depended on weather conditions that could not be predicted reliably. Each shipment carried risk. Each delay increased cost. On paper, the system remained intact. In practice, it was becoming inefficient. Profit still existed, but it required increasing effort to maintain. And beyond Alaska itself, the empire supporting this system was entering a period of instability. By the mid-19th century, the limitations of Russian control became increasingly visible. The fur trade, once the foundation of the entire structure, declined as overexploitation reduced available resources. Revenue decreased. Operational costs remained high. At the same time, external pressures intensified. The Crimean War exposed significant weaknesses within the Russian Empire's military and economic systems. The capacity to defend distant territories became uncertain. Across the Pacific, British influence expanded. Alaska, positioned near British-controlled regions, represented a vulnerability. Maintaining the territory required investment. Losing it to a rival power would yield no return. The balance shifted. Alaska was no longer viewed as a profitable frontier. It was increasingly seen as a liability. A different solution emerged, not through expansion, but through withdrawal structured as transaction. In 1867, negotiations concluded without spectacle. Russian Minister Eduard de Stuckel and U.S. Secretary of State William H. Seward reached an agreement. The price was set at $7.2 million. The Alaska Purchase transferred control of the territory to the United States. At the time, the decision appeared uncertain. No major resource discoveries had been confirmed. No immediate strategic necessity was evident. Public reaction reflected this uncertainty. The acquisition was labeled Seward's Folly, a frozen expanse, distant and impractical. The transaction seemed disconnected from immediate benefit. Yet the transfer had already altered the structure of control. The consequences had not yet emerged. In the years following the purchase, Alaska remained loosely governed. Military administration established initial control, but institutional development lagged. Law enforcement was inconsistent. Settlements remained isolated. The territory did not immediately transform. Then, conditions shifted. Gold discoveries in the late 19th century triggered rapid population movement. Prospectors arrived in large numbers, establishing temporary settlements that expanded quickly. Economic activity increased. Infrastructure followed gradually. The perception of Alaska began to change. In the 20th century, its strategic importance became increasingly clear. During World War II, Japanese forces invaded and occupied Attu and Kiska in the Aleutian Islands, demonstrating that Alaska was not beyond the reach of conflict. Military installations expanded. Transportation networks improved. In the early Cold War period, Alaska's proximity to the Soviet Union across the Bering Strait made it a major frontline region for air defense and military planning. The same distance that once limited control now defined strategic advantage. By 1959, Alaska entered the United States as its 49th state. The transformation was complete. The land itself had not changed. Only its role within global systems had. It was never a mistake, only a place understood too late